Like Tim said, we are in Unity Park, also known as the Alumni Park for the school complex. I mean, who remembers this before when it was elementary, or high school and middle school here? Now that's one school, that's a huge middle school. The high school is outside in town, and this part of town has gotten pretty busy, and we are on battlefield proper. As I imagine Tim is going to tell you, you've got Confederates creeping into town here, you've got Union soldiers contesting it, you've got a bullet-riddled fence right on the south side of this park, and of course we have witness buildings, including the Farnsworth House with its bullet-damaged sides. We've got witness trees. Take it away, and get your father a toasted almond bar.
So I still don't get that reference.
It's Eddie Murphy. Does anybody remember that? You don't get, no, Chris does. You don't get no ice cream, get your father a toasted almond bar, and bring me back my change. Okay. Man. Yeah. There you go. Okay.
So now this area of town did see heavy fighting during the battle. You know, I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned this group. I guess I did. But a large number of Northern soldiers retreated down this street during the fighting. If I had to estimate, and you know, soldiers don't run through backyards and across the fields, they run down the street. I would say at least 10,000 Northern soldiers came down the street between 4:30 and 5:30 on the afternoon of July 1st. So just a large amount of men. Catherine Garlack, or Anna Garlack, I should say, her daughter, lives up the street here. She said that at one point she believed she could have walked across the street on the heads of the soldiers. The crowd was so dense of retreating soldiers down this street. The Southern Army overran the town, and they held the buildings at the edge of the town for 2.5 days. There basically were no buildings up here at all, and this was Cemetery Hill. And there were some buildings lining the street, and a tannery complex over here, but this whole area of the town was occupied by Southern soldiers, and Northern soldiers were firing into the town, and vice versa. We have an account by a guy who was in that house right there, the Weinbrenner house. And he was a student at the Lutheran Seminary. And another student, his best friend, was dating one of the Weinbrenner girls and would end up marrying her. But they came here on the first day of the battle for safety from the fighting on the other side of town. And on the second and third day, they hid in the cellar of this house, which of course now is Mr. G's old-fashioned homemade ice cream, which I suspect some of our people in the group, Gary, are going to visit in a minute. According to Martin Luther Kohler, out of this house from Wednesday evening, July 1st, until Saturday morning, July 4th, we were not able to go without imminent danger of being killed. The Confederates entered the house where we were and discharged shots from the doors and windows. Some of the Union soldiers took a position at a house 200 or 300 yards distant on the same street. And these two squads of men kept up almost a continuous duel. We had to remain in the cellar as long as daylight lasted on Thursday and Friday. And what added to our discomfort and that of the entire family, when the Confederates entered the house, they took away everything edible. In our prison, we could hear the Union cheer and the rebel yell out on the bloody fields, while the shells shrieked and moaned. We could hear the artillery flying over our heads, and the roar of the terrific cannonading which caused the house to shake, while ever and anon we heard Minnie balls crashing through the doors and windows above us. Now also, it was this area on November 19th that was the procession.
And real quick, the first picture I showed you was right before apparently the procession started. While Tim's talking, I'll show you another picture of the procession, making no mistake, you know, that you're looking at right where we're standing here, especially off to the your left side of your right side of the photo.
Yeah, on the left side of the photo, we're looking at the houses across the street, and you can see the big house in the left foreground is a John Rupp house, which stood up there where the yellowish beige house now stands. That's a post-war structure. And then the tannery complex with the smokestack behind it, and of course the Farnsworth house you can clearly see with all the bullet holes in it. And you can see the bullet holes in it today there. And on this side of the street we have the Solomon Welty house, which is just a little bit up against the street. And then here we have the Samuel McCreary house. It's the second one, and the John Weinbrenner house is the third one. So there are three houses here along the street. And this image is taken from the front of the McClellan house or the Jenny Wade house. And these views are taken of the procession on November 19th, 1863. Also prominently featured on the right of those images is the sycamore tree here. At one time, there were 3 sycamore trees on Baltimore Street. One there, one up, there's 2 of them in front of the Weinbrenner house. One of them, the middle one, kind of suffered from some rot, and it was taken down a number of years ago. So that one no longer is here. But we still have the 2 sycamore trees. Because that one was cut down and they were able to count the rings, it's from 1820. And again, for anyone who knows, I am anti-witness tree. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm anti-witness tree Facebook site. Very specific. So if we want to learn if they're witness trees or not, I suggest we cut them down and count the rings to be sure. I don't know why.
Tim is even against taking a core sample that doesn't kill the tree.
That's right.
Where you can count the rings more safely.
But they did count that one. It was 60 years old at the time. I guess 1820. I guess 40-some years old at the time of the battle in that image. But you can see the 2 sycamore trees along Baltimore Street are still here in all their glory.
Tim, can I have you clear? I think I may have misled y'all. So this is not the house. Weinbrenner's the third one?
That's right. Weinbrenner's the third one.
So again, the first 2 are no longer here. It's the third one in that's Weinbrenner, and that's why the witness tree looks so far away. And that's why you can't see the bullet-riddled side slat fence, because it's 2 houses deep.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's not the first one or the second one you see on the right side of the road. It's the third one in. So I wanted to correct my error.
The first house in the view there, the Solomon Welty house, it still stands. It's just, it's the brick house, bed and breakfast up here. It's been greatly renovated. So only the back of that is original, but the front is totally different.
Now, Tim might hand out another map with a special deal at the bed and breakfast there at the Welty house. I mean, because that's what he's doing, man.
Yeah, you never know. So the procession came down the street, and we have images. We're fortunate to have these images of the procession. And on display at the Adams County Historical Society Museum is a 3rd version of the procession that's from an original copy that was purchased by William Frastinito. So you have to look at that in our museum. We don't have that one, do we?
We do not.
Okay. Now, 2 things I wanted to talk about here. 2 things.
We look forward to the second one.
Okay. One of them is the horse. So one of the myths about the Gettysburg Address is that Lincoln was purposely given a horse that was too small. And according to one version of the story, you know, the horse, oh look, here comes the Gettysburg police. One version of the story is John H. McClellan, who is the owner of the McClellan House, you know, the Hotel Gettysburg. So John McClellan, who maybe he's like a cousin of someone who knows Abraham Lincoln, George Brenton McClellan, gives him the horse. And so he's trying to make him look bad and gives him a small horse. And there's several accounts that talk about it. According to H.C. Holloway, a student of Gettysburg College, the committee had provided a horse of fine style for the president. If there was any difference in size, Mr. Lincoln's was a bit below the average in height. After he had mounted the animal, the difference was much more perceptible, for Mr. Lincoln's feet were near the ground. The spectacle was humorous, and no one seemed to be more conscious of it than himself. Henry Eyster Jacobs, a local, wrote, "Why an abnormally small horse was given to him to mount is hard to understand. It looked as if the president could simply plant his feet on the ground and let the horse pass under him." Now, other people denied this in their later writings. William Tipton said, "The horse which was given Mr. Lincoln to ride in the procession has come under some discussion, some claiming that the animal was so small that the president's feet touched the ground. This is ridiculous. Mr. Lincoln was mounted on a fine bay horse owned by Sheriff Rebert, whose son was a member of Lincoln's bodyguard, Company B, 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry. Mr. Lincoln, as I recalled, was well mounted and made a splendid appearance." Henry Clay Cockburn was with the Marine Corps, and he was Lincoln's personal bodyguard here in the procession and rode beside him. Mr. Lincoln was mounted upon a young and beautiful chestnut bay horse, the largest in the Cumberland Valley. And his towering figure, surmounted by a high silk hat, made the rest of us look small. And so he goes on and tells some stories about it. We are fortunate that we have an account written by Harvey Sweeney. And I read some of it earlier. Harvey Sweeney lived in the house today we call the Farnsworth House. And he wrote a letter to his brother on November 29th. And he wrote all kinds of fascinating things about this day. Early on the morning of the 19th, everything was bustle and commotion. At daylight, the streets were a dense mass of living beings. Crowds were moving to Cemetery Hill and winding their way over the bloody grounds of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of July. About 9 o'clock, the roll of the drums and a heavy rumble of cannons announced the preparations of the day, when the loud booming of the minute guns on Cemetery Hill gave warning of the solemn occasion. At 10 o'clock, the procession was formed and began to move. This was a grand and impressive sight. I have no language to depict it, and though the mighty mass rolled on as the waves of a mighty ocean, everything was in perfect order. A living sea of human beings. But the greatest of the great men that honored this occasion was President Lincoln, mounted on a beautiful bay charger between Seward and Chase. Chase is not here. Like Saul of old, he towered a head taller than every other man. He sat gracefully bowing with a modest smile and uncovered head to the throngs of women, men, and children that greeted him from the doors and windows. His modest appearance and dignified manners, to say nothing of the noble speech he made here, has endeared him to the hearts of the people and added thousands of friends to him on that day. But though he looked cheerful and happy on that day, an observant eye could see that the dreadful responsibility that this nation and this wicked rebellion has cast upon him has had its marked effect, and that he feels the terrible responsibility that rests upon him. Is that pretty good for a Gettysburg butcher? He was a former school teacher. His son had died in the Army in July of 1862. So, he looked upon this with special interest. Now, one other story I want to tell here, I'm sure Garry has stories to tell here, right? Oh, he's in the back. But I have to tell this story. I think half the people in the crowd know the story and have heard me tell it before, but I just love it. Right over there at that sycamore tree, in the 1970s, they put a sign, and I think it might be 1979, but you can walk around the tree and see the sign on the tree.
Now, we're not telling you where to walk. You can go whatever way you'd like. Sorry.
But that sign, I like it as a monument. Let's call it a monument, because I am one who loves to overstate the obvious. And the plaque says, President Lincoln passed by this tree on November 19th, 1863. And he did. But the story I wanted to tell you was, we have ghost tours. The Farnsworth House has ghost tours, and there's a ghost tour up there, and a ghost tour down there, and a ghost tour over here. Yeah, there's like 13 different ghost tours. But one day I was over there at the Farnsworth House, and someone came running over and told me the story that this one ghost tour guide was telling. And I couldn't believe it. So I came over, and next time he came by, and I listened to it myself. And after he told the story, I just wanted to shake this guy's hand.
This better be good. You're really building it up here.
Because it was one of the greatest stories I'd ever heard. But he said that the procession got started really late. And for, almost an hour, Lincoln is just sitting on that horse in the square. And then, they come down Baltimore Street and they're bouncing down. And Lincoln had too much coffee that morning. And so by the time he got down here, he really had to go. So we had Henry Clay Cochran halt the procession. And they threw out some bodyguards around this tree. He came around behind the tree, did his business, got back on the horse, and went up to the cemetery to deliver the greatest speech in American history. And the town fathers here in Gettysburg, apparently they'd always been aware of this fact. So they wanted to highlight that in some form or fashion when they came up with the idea to put that plaque on the front of the tree. But at the last moment, they thought better of it. So they changed one letter on the plaque. President Lincoln passed by this tree. There is not even a shred of truth in that story. But I loved it. I thought it was great.
So I chuckled to myself when I gave Tim by far the hardest speaking part in our last skit, where Tim had to pronounce a lot of things, the earth and the heavens and everything like that. But I have another Trust Challenge coin, a Gettysburg one. No, this is Brandy Station, sorry. You'll have to enunciate it carefully and quickly to get it to the first person that can tell me how Tim pronounces the word cousin. Oh, no, I have to shake your hand. Sorry. No, I have to shake it to you. It's a challenge coin. There you go. Well done. He got it quick,
But
man.
he knows that because I'm from Bulmer.
Yeah, everybody there.
Kilt, fount,
And them trees.
Yeah, we take the T out of Bulmer and we put it in other words.
Cousin.
Hello, this is Trace Atkins. To stay up to date on all the latest and coolest videos, please subscribe to the Trust YouTube channel. Preserve, educate, inspire.